So here we are at the railroad tracks. I'm kind of excited. You have watched me photograph the background for this, and what's important for us now is to find a set of railroad tracks that turns into the landscape, just like I described when I shot the background landscape, and also have the same light direction. So we're here to find that. This train line is perfect in that it turns in a horseshoe shape. So along that horseshoe, I should be able to find one point of it that turns into my picture and also have the light just as we want it. If you remember, when I photographed the picture towards the mountain, the sun was setting to my right. Now, this railroad tracks here has the curve that I want, coming into the frame, turning along those trees and towards the mountains. And in the morning, the sun will rise right over here. So I will have the sun lining up, I will have the tracks lining up. So this is actually a pretty perfect situation. But for the fall off here, coming way down into this water. So if I were to shoot here, I would need to build some platform that can get me high enough. So we're going to follow the tracks and see if we can find a place where I could shoot it in the afternoon. So it lines up with the afternoon sun, and I could actually stand and photograph the picture without having to go through the hassle of one, being here in the dark, which we did the other day with the cowboy. It's a beautiful way to shoot, and it creates a very specific atmosphere, but it's tougher to work, especially if you need to build platforms and all that stuff prior to getting here. So we're going to go for a walk and we're going to look at a few other angles. But the essence of what we're doing here today is really being prepared. So I know where on these tracks I'll take the picture, where it curves right, and where the sun comes up and down, so I can match the two pieces perfectly. So we're back on the tracks. Someone from the railroad came and asked what we were doing here, and I don't think we've been on the tracks for more than 15 minutes before he showed up. So I think that proves what we talked about, having the permits to be where you want to be, being prepared so that you don't show up with a large crew and then being tossed off the tracks where you would take your picture. As we talked about in the prerequisites for composite photography, there's a few things that we have to be absolutely aware of. One is obviously the height of the camera, the kind of lens, the distance from camera to subject, and then there's the light direction. And now we're dealing with two things that's kind of unmovable. As I talked about, we always start with the unmovable part, which for me was the landscape with the mountains. You can't just change the mountains around, but I can change people around, I can change a car around, I can change a train cart around depending on where the tracks are. So I'm going to find a place along these tracks where my light lines up with the light that we have on the background plate. So I'm following those important steps, starting with light direction, which we're going to sort out here today so that we're prepared for when we shoot this in a few days from now. In my commercial career, I shot for railways twice. I shot for Union Pacific and then Amtrak. And it's almost impossible to get access to shoot on railroad tracks because they have trains running, there's all these liability issues, and if we pay them a few $1,000s, that's not even worth it for these big train companies to have that liability of people on the tracks. So what we have found is a museum. These are dormant tracks that only runs on the weekends when they have tours from the museum. So this is part of the Western Railway Museum. So it's quiet, and it allows us to work in peace and allows us to bring that handcart on here without being worried about liabilities of trains coming or anything like that. So please do your research. Don't do silly stuff that might put you in danger. So we looked at one angle for the sunrise. We're going to walk along the tracks. I'm going to explore a little bit and see if there's another option for me where I could shoot the tracks at sunset with the light lining up again, falling off straight to the right from where I wanted the tracks to come in. So with those compositing rules in mind, I'm going to continue exploring the tracks to see if I could find the perfect line of the railroad tracks with the perfect light sitting to my right as it fell onto the grass and onto the landscape that we shot a few days ago. So going to take you along these tracks and see if we can find the right perspective. So I think we're done with this tech scout of the railroad tracks. We have two options, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The one in the afternoon is a little bit off when it comes to the sun direction. I wish the sun had been over just a few more degrees, 15, 20 degrees maybe. And that will happen a month from now, but we don't have a month. We're gonna do this in a few days. But I think we could cheat it just beautifully. We could put up a shade, the silk, you know, maybe put a strobe to help the sun move over a tiny bit. So that's kind of what's going through my mind. I could shoot it over there in the morning, perfect light, but then as I explained, it was way deep down. We would need to build a platform for me to stand on, and working with composites in the morning is a little bit tougher. I'd like to do test shots, put them into my background just to get a visual on how it works. I know we measured it, I know we have the camera heights and all that stuff that we need technically, but it's always good to eyeball it and get it in there. That's really hard to do, test shots in the dark. So working in the afternoon for composites is preferable to me, so I could do those test shots and work my way into the light, getting good. So for me, this tiny little distance that the sun is not quite lining up, I think we can cheat, and I'm pretty confident we can make a 100% believable composite shooting this in the sunset looking that way. Along these railroad tracks coming in, and it's kind of, if you look down this way, it's kind of nice because the railroad tracks, and if you see the fence right there, the fence is similar to our tree line. Remember when I took that background? We talked about the tree line and the tracks coming in and leading your eye into it, following the tree line towards the mountain. That's what this does. Imagine the fence, there's the trees, and this coming in like this. It's a perfect sweep. So with that, I think I'm really well prepared, knowing where the light sits and how the elements are going to come together. Next time we're here, we're going to have the models, hair and makeup, stylist, an old guy, beautiful woman, and all those elements that we will use to shape this up to be a beautiful composite image.